Well, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Chase McMichael, and he is the CEO and co-founder of Infinigraph, which is a SaaS big data marketing intelligence platform. He is a leading entrepreneur for online interactive media and especially big data in the cloud. His focus is on the insight for better engagement, which is the core of marketing. He's spent 19 years in real-time collaboration technologies for large-scale and in real big companies like Oracle and Hearst and Chase Manhattan. He's a contributor to social media publications. And we have a man that's very honored. He has had a lot of honors, like the Fast Track 50 for his first startup, Unbound, which was before this one. And he's an inductee to Marketing Sherpa Viral Hall of Fame. And he is on Media 100 for Infinigraph. And so with that, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Chase McMichael.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Actually, I know Dave, and he had me at one of his 6, and I really had a great time. And you know what I like about this forum is just the physical interaction. So at any given moment, please stop me if you have a question or something, because I really, I'm hearing it for you guys. I'm not here to just get on a soapbox. I want to make this interactive, and I want to answer questions, because what your feedback you're going to give to me is actually very valuable. So yes, this is big data. Hopefully you've seen this graphic. I stole a few graphics from my presentation. I think it's really important to note that we are really seeing a renaissance right now in the physical sheer amount of data that's coming at us. And it's quite daunting. If you think about the clients that we go after are big brands. We sell to, and we also work with startups and small companies as well. But primarily, these are marketing departments that we're working for, and that we're helping them optimize their content intelligence, which we're going to talk about. I'm going to show you some examples of what we do, why we do it, how we're helping brands figure out what content's working for their customers to be more effective. But the reason why I love this graphic is it really gives the scale of the problem. And think about just how much content, how much information and actions people are actually doing right now. Does everyone have a phone? Everyone has a mobile phone, right? Well, what's really cool is, and I actually got these slides a little out of order. There's another slide, but it's cool. So the 3 V's of big data. Who's seen this? Who knows this? Come on, everyone knows this. My company doesn't deal in petabytes. We're at the terabyte level. We have more data we know what to do with. And I've met a lot of clients and companies that they're sitting on an enormous amount of data. They don't really know what to do, or it hasn't been organized to be functional or usable. And the amount of effort you have to go into figuring out, well, I've got this data. I want to utilize it, make it into a product that I can actually monetize. And are you batching it? Is it really real time, or is it a stream? Who here is on Twitter? Remember the fail whale? Come on, everyone knows the fail whale. They had a huge problem. They built a great platform. A lot of people got on, and it kept failing. As a matter of fact, it got so bad that event could have crippled Twitter, where we wouldn't be talking about it. Do you realize that every single media company uses Twitter? Facebook was laughing at them. You think they're laughing now? No. 50% of the Super Bowl campaigns and videos that were, the commercials were Twitter-based. And matter of fact, Facebook was almost non-existent. Did you notice that? That's a big thing that's happening. So they're obviously in the stream world. What I'm going to talk a little bit about today about real-time, what we're doing, Infinigraph's doing around real-time data, real-time intelligence, And then we as a company deal with a monstrous amount of unstructured data across the social graph. Every time a social network pops up or an application gets on a mobile phone that's broadcasting data, complicates the problem. Because there's more data being created, and it's not in a structure that would be nice and formatted. And for a marketer, that's a nightmare, because it's not usable information for them, so you have to structure it and make it usable. And we're going to talk specifically about how do we go about doing that.
Hey, Michael, I've seen one more V, veracity. So how does that factor into this diagram?
I think we should do like a quad diagram. I like that. I want you to email me that. I love it. Make something more unique. So I passed up a slide. I'm sorry. No, I'm right. So it's not information overload that we're dealing with. I'm describing that, right? It's filtering. This is actually a pretty known author. And I really love this quote because that's what we focus on a relentless daily basis, is how to create filters on this enormous amount of information to make it usable. And it's like, how do we create a lens that we can focus for a marketer to make sense of this information? So this is the slide I want to show you. So the fastest growing segment right now is mobile. What is the fastest growing nation with mobile devices? China. Imagine the amount of applications that are being created that are broadcasting. So this device here, and I'm very excited about this. Has anyone downloaded the application for doing Google Sky? For seeing the actual stars? Well, that's taking your GPS, the position, and then it's taking an enormous data set. And if you guys want to see this during the break, I'll show it to you, because it is mind-boggling. But now imagine that this is a local area network, has its own, Bluetooth, right? So now you're talking about location, proximity. Do you hear about Apple and getting their proximity patents? So now you're going to start, who's heard about Google Glasses? Okay, so now kids and people are going to be walking around with devices that are going to be sucking in more information and visual information. So this is the opportunity of a lifetime for startups and being able to harness and create applications around this data really like never before. And that's why I'm excited about this discussion. So I want to do a really quick poll. Who here is working on any big data projects? Yeah. So what do you do?
We've collected a lot of data from CE devices, and we're trying to use that for various purposes.
Marketing and application intelligence. Yes. Cool. What about you?
Yeah, I work for IBM, so we're working for some very large clients and analyzing their data, which they have been storing for many years, mostly for customer call, marketing.
Nice. Anyone else? Yeah.
Machine-to-machine communication, sensing.
Yeah, you know what? I think if you think about just here locally, the fact that P&G got the smart meter rolled out to every single household, there's another monstrous big data opportunity. And now being able to connect that to smart grids and things like that. So, I'm talking about, my discussion today is about marketing, but it has much more broader implications, especially on the real-time side. So let's talk a little bit about batch processing. We use batch processing ourselves. It's very important, but you really can't do any type of real-time querying across a system like this. And so, who here is actually doing real-time data analysis or any type of real-time use of the data? Anyone? Yeah, great. Well, it's a very different formula in data processing. especially if you're at a very large scale, you have to have this in memory. So I'm going to mention some things about HANA, things that we like, and I'm going to mention a little bit about, and by the way, all these slides are going to be on SlideShare, Infinigraph, so it's on slideshare.com/Infinigraph, and so they'll all be up. So I'm not going to bore you with what batch processing is, because I think everyone here knows this. But what's important to note is the business intelligence behind the physical data itself. And I can't stress this enough. If you do not organize your data with a business process in mind, you're creating a nightmare. Because as soon as the data starts to balloon, which it will, you are now having an issue of an I/O problem, of being able to even run calculations on the physical data. So this is a big problem that you as a developer and or as a marketer or a business person, you need to first of all figure out your business process before you even embark on collecting. And a lot of clients that we talk to, they've collected large amounts of data with no plan on how they're physically going to use it. And that's a huge mistake, because without a plan, then you don't even know the infrastructure you're going to be put into. And who's heard about, obviously the word big data is an overblown word, right? Well, there's been a little bit of backlash in the industry. And this is where people have rushed out, put a lot of systems together, a lot of money, and then all of a sudden the CFO sits down and says, hey, what are we spending all this money on? And these people. And all of a sudden, if you don't really have a great business case, you're in case of losing that division or opportunity or whatever. So this is one of the things we really stress a lot. And this is what we call the, there's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scenario. And one of the things that we focused here at Infinigraph was we wanted to not only build an agile platform, but we have to monitor it. So if you're not designing your systems in a way that can be monitored, you're going to be putting yourself into a failure mode. The problems with bringing together this amount of physical information, and one of the things is looking at patterns. Being able to monitor a certain system and knowing where your failure points are is critical when you're developing out a platform. As well as server pooling, and I can just really go into depth, but the real-time aspect of this is creating elasticity. And who's heard of Amazon AWS? Great, yes. They've done a phenomenal job. Who's heard about their failures? They've been catastrophic. As a matter of fact, they've really, really damaged companies. And we're talking about millions of dollars. So before you say, hey, I'm going to pile my data in Amazon, you need to start asking some very fundamental questions. We don't run on Amazon. So, and I'm not here to promote any platform or anything like that, but we can't go down. As a matter of fact, we can't lose context with our data because we have these in-memory indexes. And if anything gets whacked up, our customers can't see the data, and the interface that we provide them won't work. So our uptime is critical. And if you know a little bit about my background, I come from the carrier space, so I'm really sort of anal about that. So 3 steps to effectively using big data. Now, I actually am a physicist with a mathematical degree. And how I got into this is a long story, but there's a lot of science in data today, really like never before. And so for a marketer, this is where, again, stressing, what is your problem? What problem are you trying to solve? And that's one of the hardest things to answer. What is the problem? The second part is that, being able to separate the noise from the signal. One of the things that we describe, who's here has heard Radian 6? Social monitoring, keyword-based monitoring. Well, what made that so powerful and what made that so important was that was really for the first time a commercial product that could go out there and you could put a keyword in and it would give you back and say, who mentioned your brand? But, the reality is that we've moved from a keyword world to an interest graph world. And that consumers now are not mentioning brands. But what they're doing is they're acting on content. They're sharing photos. When they see a piece of content, what do? They share it, they like it. And that sharing and that actions is really the social lubricant and the information that's very vital to a brand. And then the actual, that is the insights. So for a brand today, they're paying a lot of money for insights. They're sitting on an enormous amount of data, so they want to not only decrypt this, but they want to create marketing efficiency. And so the problem is that brands are literally fighting in the blind. They don't even know what their competitors are doing. The value is that if I know something's trending in my own business, that's very powerful. Majority of clients that we talk to, they don't even know what their competitors, the type of content that they're producing, and what's got engagement. So that level of being able to access that today at scale is not only available, but you can now aggregate it. And this is exactly what we're doing on a real-time basis. So real quick, a little bit of what Infinigraph does. Yeah?
Can you talk about the fact that one of the powers of big data and things like MapReduce is that supposedly you can just gather data, and then after the fact, you might either see patterns that you weren't even looking for, and so on, right? And that's very powerful. But to your point, to gather data without knowing what you want to do with it, so it's suicidal. But how do you reconcile those two statements? Or in your mind, you should always know what you want before you start.
Well, there's two. First of all, storage of information is cheap. 10 years ago, it was very expensive. Now it's so cheap, and you can use, really off-the-shelf free products instead of buying Oracle license. That, I'm not against gathering a bunch of data and aggregating a bunch of data. I was part of a very large data project at Chase, where we were literally bringing together a global database for all of Chase Manhattan. It was insane, and in some ways we never completed it because we were talking about data warehouses that were just everywhere globally. It was crazy, but Walter Shipley wanted this global database, and I experienced stuff I never thought was possible, and the things that we did, but. One of my experience in that was that it was just, let's get it all together. And then we'll figure out, hey, we can do all these great things on BI on top of it. Well, in reality, we couldn't query it. And so what Infinigraph's focus was we wanted to be able to really create some algorithms on top of the data to have the data actually be describable. Now, I know that sounds sort of wacky, but you can imagine how the difference between and I describe it like this, a JPEG file, right, versus a raw file that was a bitmap. Well, the size of those two files are vastly different. But when you look at them, they virtually look the same, right? Well, in many ways, data is very similar to that. And if you're able to create an algorithm on top of your data constructs, the things that you can do to be smart about your storage of that is immensely important. And that's exactly what we've done to allow us to retrieve and do some calculations on our own data. And this is one of we consider our secret sauces. So yes, storage is important, but having that mindset of, hey, I want to be able to query it. And that was one of our big things. We had to be able to query data across many data sets. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like really quick here. And then, we characterize ourselves like a ComScore Nielsen. Now, if you know about ComScore and Nielsen, they create scoring systems. Well, we wanted to score content. And who's heard of Cloud? Cloud's not doing so great now, but, they scored people. Well, we wanted to score content. We felt that was a little bit more meaningful. If I could put a score on a piece of content, photo, text-based, piece of content, then I'm literally able to go back to a brand and say, hey, your content is not scoring as well as your competitors. And that's exactly what we did. Who's seen this before? Paid, owned, and earned. This is the three main properties that brands use to reach their customers. And the earned side is literally being able to, like using a social and your own as your website, and paid is the advertising side. And today it's very difficult using advertising on social because it's a communication vehicle. And you're literally trying to get people to act on your content. When was the last time anyone clicked on a banner ad? It's okay to say you did. There's no harm in it. It's not like a bad thing. Well, that's a big problem in the industry, and everyone knows about it. That's why content now has become king, and it still has. So this is the fun part here, and this is where the enormity becomes, is that a piece of content today has many attributions. We'd be hard-pressed to go to a website or a blog that doesn't have the social share functions. Now, I know that everyone here has clicked the social share function, right? Like, shared, right? Well, guess what? Imagine 1 billion people doing that across multiple networks. Who here is on Pinterest? Pinterest? Anyone? Pinterest? Facebook? Twitter? Okay, good. Well, these are massive, probably the largest data sources on the planet today, and growing. And they're growing at a geometric rate. And the reason why is because of this thing I just described, is that content now is having so many different attributions being applied to it. So for a marketer, these attributions are very important because this describes engagement. And if you're able to actually determine what engagement is and categorize that, that's a gold mine in itself. And that's exactly what we've done. So we spent like 3 years categorizing and organizing all the airlines, apparel, cosmetics, B2B, B2C companies. Think about how many sites are out there that are about baby products. I had no idea. We just did a project for Darden on steaks. You know how many steak companies are out there? Do you know how many restaurants that are chefs are creating steaks? It's insane. Now for a client that's interested in that one vertical, that's a gold mine because that's what they're telling you. You're finding out that, hey, this client, this customer is into this product and this is what they're acting on. So that's a very important data set. Who here uses Google? Everyone uses Google. Have you noticed that the search function has gotten, even with the introduction of Penguin, it's not that great. As a matter of fact, I've noticed that, and do you guys agree with me or disagree with me, that searching on Google doesn't feel like we're getting the results back that we used to. Agree? Yeah. Why is that? Because people have paid a lot of money to game the system. So I love Google, but the reality is that we as a consumer are discovering more content in our social feeds. And that's a game changer. Because now a consumer on their mobile device that has a feed is getting referrals from trusted individuals of what they're finding. And that's called curation. And when I'm talking a little bit about curation and why that's important, and what we're doing on a real-time basis to actually access that data. But there's content trends. So you can imagine how we just did a thing around clients of Forever 21. We've done stuff for L'Oreal. You can imagine how many sites are out there producing content in those vertical industries, and at any given moment, there's millions of people accessing that content globally. So the amount of physical actions that are happening, that's the big data problem.
Next question.
Yeah.
What are you analyzing here? Do you see views, clicks, or click streams in your source material?
Clicks, comments, shares, likes, retweets. And then I'm going to talk about something we're now working on, which is the actual visual content itself. What's in the actual visual, which has created a whole paradigm shift in everything we're doing. Because it's creating more data on top of it, because it's imagery. So all three of these. So we're going to talk about curation, and then I'm going to go into behavioral analytics, and I hope I'm not boring you guys. We're getting low on sugar here. So now we've changed, it's no longer just a database sitting here with, with some rows and we're going to, it's a big index. We're have to put all this in memory. And we're talking about categorizing a little bit over 250,000 brands and trillions of pieces of content. So it's a lot of content across many vertical brands, and being able to organize that and access and query it is a nightmare. Well, we did some really smart things, and this is one of the greatest diagrams. I stole this, but it actually describes our setup, which is really cool. And we are bringing in partner data and social data. We're not bringing in machine technology, and we're not bringing in, we're not downloading, let's say, the data source from a client. But we do plan on that. But this is the actual data description. And one of the things is that without in-memory arrays, we would not be able to do what we're doing. If the cloud did not exist, we as a company could not exist because we couldn't afford to put up an infrastructure of this magnitude at the cost that we're spending. Now, I feel like we are spending a fortune, but it's nothing compared to us actually maintaining and managing that hardware ourselves. So this is a big question you have to ask yourself. Now, we have, and I'll talk a little bit about HANA, but we have a problem with is, how do you transport a terabyte of information? Because some of these clusters are extremely large, and as a matter of fact, if the audience is massively engaged around content globally, then it becomes even larger. How do you transport that from one data set to another to run calculations on? So that's a massive I/O problem. We cannot transport our data, where it is today, to another location across the internet with any efficiency. Nor can we actually, so we have a big problem ourselves. Because now we're almost, I feel like we may be locked in to where we're at. And so we're now thinking about how do we do that effectively and efficiently.
You mentioned you don't use AWS, but you do use some cloud.
Yes.
What cloud do you use?
We use Rackspace, and we have a series of databases in Hostway that are memory arrays.
Is it private cloud, basically, or is it?
It's not private, but we've been able to do some things that through our relationship to do some smart stuff on that was proprietary for us. But it's not being used by others. But the whole system is being used by others.
How do you guarantee 5 now?
Huh?
How do you guarantee the system of
They're doing a great job.
Well, also they're using like a hybrid of your data in the regular data center.
Yes.
Yeah, so their database is in the regular data center, then they're using the virtual machines for the cloud, spinning up the new instances, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's the both worlds.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate that the way our system is set up, our drone, our data acquires, if one goes down, because they do, doesn't affect the entire system because it's distributed. So all of that we've engineered the best we could, and knowing that it will go down. I do get nervous. I'm scared, trust me, about all kinds of things.
Chase, how are we doing for time?
I'm good. I'm almost...
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So in-memory is key. We are in love with... we like HANA for a lot of reasons. We have not implemented a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. We've done a little bit. But one of the cool things about HANA, and I love this diagram, and I stole this diagram because it's doing something very cool. And that's the ability to do behavioral real-time analysis and then doing offers based upon that analysis. There's not many platforms that can do this. And HANA has some capabilities on the mathematical side in memory that there's not many platforms out there that are even, I would say, close to. And so that's of high interest to us because that's exactly what we've been doing in a semi-brute force manner, where now these are baked into a physical platform that runs in memory. So this is a really cool diagram, and the reason why I like it is because I have a work with a client that's doing these offer managements. And if you can catch someone on a mobile device or virtually anywhere at the moment when they're acting on content and then pop an offer, we're talking that's fast. That's amazing. And that's exactly where we want to be with our intelligence. And so, yes, HANA actually could, in fact. So it's real important. Near is important. Real time is a funny word because is it really real time? I always like to use the word just in time. Because the reality is if someone is experiencing something or you're delivering data to a client and they have the sense that this is fast enough for them, then it's real time. And so that can be very subjective. Yes?
Would you make a comment on your experience with HANA for traditional type of enterprise applications, that type of thing, using this platform versus some type of a new type of application? Do you see any differences?
Yeah, you know, beyond the marketing hype, right? You know, you've really got to have something special that you're doing with the data. You have to have an intense calculation and monster amount of rows. Ridiculous. So that your query time across that data set has to be extremely fast for you to be efficient. The majority of the applications don't need this, nor could they justify it. So that's, in essence, back to my original premise about understanding your business application. If you want the queries to be fast because you're a developer, that's not a business driver. If you have in your servicing, you know, an application that has millions of consumers collaborating, then the answer would be yes. So that's really where the decision point. For us, we wanted to do in-memory calculations. And the ability to do in-memory I/O was extremely important. So in that context, this has high value to us.
Question.
Yeah.
So did you go more column-oriented in your thinking of the BI rather than the traditional row-oriented warehouse thinking? Because HANA is clearly column-oriented, the biggest strength. So.
Yeah, column-oriented is what we're doing.
Okay.
And you have to be smart about how far you want to go with that. Okay. Listen, everything breaks down, okay? If you pump enough on it, it won't work. And there's not a silver bullet in any of this. And trust me, we're a startup. We can't spend a lot of money. We're excited about the fact that they're hosting this. We're not excited about the fact that it's on AWS. But, you know, we're, as a company, looking to be forward-thinking. We're saying, you know, at some point we may have to have our own infrastructure at some point. And in that case, what are we doing to prepare to do that? And that's one of the reasons why we're actually working with that, is to prepare. So, am I good on time? 5 more minutes? 2
Talk
more?
fast.
Huh? Okay, talk fast. So social segmentation. So hypercuration. This is where the rubber meets the road. So our clients, we actually give them a feed, an aggregated feed across many brands simultaneously. So we do that across all the cosmetics. So like 45 cosmetic sites. Can you imagine how much content is being shared around 45 sites? It's a lot. Well, at any given moment, one piece of content is going to trend. It's going to do better than the other. And that's that scoring I talked about. Well, this is hot because you're literally crowdsourcing the social interaction or engagement. And this is changing all the time. So we're able to not only aggregate across, and this is retail, but we're literally aggregating across these on an ongoing basis. So for a marketer, we really make them the smartest people in the room because they know what content's effective, what type of imagery is, and that's the thematics I was talking about. So one of the things that we're doing as a company is we found and started seeing a reoccurrence across many sites simultaneously. We're using virtually similar imagery and getting higher engagement. And this is exciting because you really are crowdsourcing human intelligence like never before. And so that's one of the fun parts about it. And this was a project we did, and this is an old graph, but imagine how many hospitals, medical institutions, and foundations there is. So we have all the cancer, the diabetes, pharmaceutical sites. So we started aggregating all this stuff. An enormous amount of information, extremely valuable. And we were able to help UPMC really make some smart decisions like never before on what they were going to do to attract and access their customers with the right information. And we were able to do that, again, through crowdsourcing. And this is the trending identification. So not only scoring the content, but now we're decrypting the thematics of the actual visuals. And what's happened is that, who's heard of Vine? Vine? Going once? One person? Vine? Two? Okay. Vine.co. Gotta check it out. It's going to be one of the, it's huge. It's literally, you're able to take a 6-second video and share it with your friends. Now you think, what's so big deal about it? It exploded at Fashion Week in New York. It makes sense, right? You want to perhaps, but think about the amount of physical information that a 6-second clip contains. So for us, we're really excited, because if this goes further than what we think, you know, from like an Instagram or a Pinterest, now we're talking about multiple imageries capturing multiple information and context. So another bigger data problem. So here's, this is the last slide. So here's our problems. We have a distributed, called drones, and we actually do in-memory, we're doing some funky calculations to not only aggregate this data, but then pipe it back to our data source to be able to do some smart things with it. So it's pre-calculated on, don't want to go into all the depth, but how do we scale that out and make them smarter? You know, we're having a challenge right now with the fact that more data sets, like Vine. Vine's come on the scene. How do you do analysis on that much data that people are sharing? It's insane. Well, we want to solve that problem. And then the categorization and taxonomy. We literally have categorized hundreds of thousands of brands, but now we're starting to see other data sources popping up. And it's a semi-nightmare. And then how do we scale all that? And that's exactly our problems that we're dealing with every day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chase. Could somebody just poke their head out and see if we've got pizza out there?
Well, while that's happening, does anyone have questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you doing any sentiment analysis? And do you see at any point in the future where you'll be able to do just-in-time and important sentiment analysis?
No.
So there is many companies out there like Intensity, Radian6, and natural language processing and sentiment analysis. We do not do that, and there's reasons why. Our clients that come to us, they want to know what's trending, visuals. It's hard to do a sentiment analysis on a picture, so we're really focused not on monitoring the actual text, but we're actually looking at what's trending from a non-keyword based. So our whole existence is non-really keyword based. It's more categorizing an industry and what's happening in that industry, not so much from a mention, but from an action. Yeah.
Why is real time such a need for you? Because you're looking at vast amounts of information and providing insights back to brands. Does it have to be like, what was the latest tweet that impacted this particular insight?
So customers want a sense of when we're aggregating across, let's say, 40, 50 sites, and we're comparing all their content. Well, that content's being created all the time. And those human actions are happening at a scale which we frankly can't keep up with. And, no point in glazing over it. I mean, there's more happening than we can ever keep up with. But from a customer perspective, they want to have a feed to see, well, what's happening in my industry. So they want to have that feel that what they're seeing, what's getting there is real time, meaning it's happening. Like if a piece of content trends in their business and it happens within that certain period of time, it's not so much like down to the millisecond, but they want that sense of, okay, it's happening now, I need to do something. Who saw about the Oreo commercial? Oreo? Anyone go once, see anything about what happened? Yeah, just do Oreo Super Bowl and Google that. It's amazing what they did. That was very real-time oriented as well, marketing.
Okay.
What do they do with?
Can we do this as the last one and then hold your questions till the end, because I want to get Metamarkets up here.
So you said customers do something about it. What could be some things they could do when they know that these are the 3 content items which are trending on the top?
Well, first and foremost is that thematics. We're able to compare their content in reference to what's working. And immediately it's very easy to see that they're not being effective. And it's down to the actual theme of the physical content, the context, the wording. So if we're seeing it over multiple sites, a reoccurrence. Now, that's one thing we talked about, is that pattern. And that is pretty much telling you that this is what the audience is resonating on. So we've been able to fundamentally change their content calendars, days, times, frequency, and type. By doing that, you're able to nail it. And we're doing it through statistical behavior, because you're looking over 40-something sites, 20 sites. Statistically, you're able to come back and nail down exactly what they have to do in the physical volume and the type. And it just becomes mathematics at that point. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chase. That's great. So while you're starving away, I'd like to get JP up here and have him talk, and then we can finish that and have some pizza.